In honor of Black History Month, we are revisiting the story of Lorraine Fox. Breast cancer stole her sister and threatened to take Lorraine's life as well. She stood up and fought. You'll hear about the grit that helped her navigate a breast cancer diagnosis while raising her 2-year-old son and 5-year-old nephew. Years later, Lorraine and her son De'Aaron Fox, a star player for the Sacramento Kings, formed the Fox Whole Family Foundation. It's a nonprofit dedicated to empowering disadvantaged youth and supporting breast cancer survivors, which includes Women of the Rose. When you subscribe to our show, you help us grow. Someone you know may need to hear this story, so please share with your family and friends. And consider supporting our mission. Your donation can help save the life of an uninsured woman. Let's talk about your breast. A different kind of podcast presented to you by The Rose, a breast center of excellence and a Texas treasure. You're going to hear frank discussions about tough topics, and you're going to learn why knowing about your breast could save your life. Lorraine has such a fascinating story, primarily because you were diagnosed so many years ago. Tell us just how old were you and how did you find out? And
I was 33 when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. The way I found out was I was doing just a routine self-exam, which I didn't normally do. I don't even know why I did it that time. And I found a lump in my left breast. I waited a couple of days and I did it again. The lump was still there. So I made an appointment with my general practitioner doctor, and she did a self-exam, and she said that, she do feel a lump too, and she wanted me to go and have a mammogram. Mm-hmm. Now, that was not my first mammogram, because I had a baseline mammogram a couple of years earlier because I had a sister that was diagnosed when she was 28 with breast cancer, and because that kind of created a family history, she sent me to have a mammogram. Well, the mammogram, showed that there was a lump there, but it didn't tell if it was cancer or not just from the mammogram, because it was a solid mass. So after the mammogram, they told me to go have an ultrasound. Mm-hmm. And on the ultrasound, it also showed the mass. It was solid, because they thought, well, maybe it's a cyst and we can aspirate it or whatever. But because it was solid, they said it wasn't a cyst. So after the ultrasound, my doctor didn't think it was, that big of a deal, but because of my age. But for me, I knew that, okay, there's something here that wasn't here before. So that's why I tell a lot of people that you need to kind of be an advocate for yourself. Mm-hmm. Don't just take that one opinion and just stop at that. And so I went back to my primary care doctor, and she suggested that I see a surgeon to maybe just do a biopsy to, see what this is, because it wasn't a cyst. So I spoke with the surgeon. We had a consultation, and then we scheduled the biopsy. We scheduled the biopsy like on a Friday, and it was a, one-day surgery. I went in and had the biopsy, and then I traveled from Louisiana to Houston because I had to come to help out Houston at my work. So I'm in Houston for a couple of days, and, when you're waiting for any type of medical results, it's like, oh my God. So I'm in Houston a couple of days, not getting any sleep, just kind of numb, going to work, going back to the hotel, working out, going to work, going back to the hotel, working out. So that, I want to say that Tuesday. So I arrived in Houston that Sunday. Went to work Monday, hadn't gotten a call yet. Went back to work on Tuesday, and one of my coworkers let me know that my doctor was on the line. So when I went outside to take the phone call, and the doctor said that they had got the results back from my biopsy and that I had breast cancer. Well, that was, to say the least, a shocker. And I knew that I had, my son was 2 at the time, and I was raising my nephew, who was about 5.5 at the time, because my sister, who was diagnosed at the age of 28, passed away at the age of 33. So I had 2 boys under 6 that I knew I had to raise. So got the diagnosis that I had breast cancer. I cried for about 30 seconds or so, and then I just had to pull myself together and say, okay, what do we have to do next? Because I have these 2 little boys. One had already lost one mother to breast cancer, and I was not going to let him lose another mother. So I got back to Houston that end of the week, and we made the appointment. We had lumpectomy. So once we did the lumpectomy, they went and they took out the lump. They went out a little bit farther and took out lymph nodes, so that they was trying to make sure that they cleared everything. I got the results back from the lumpectomy, and the surgeon said that they think they got it all, and that all the lymph nodes was clear, all the margins was clear. You should just have to have radiation, and then you should be fine. So I was like, okay, no chemo. Yes. No red devil. Yes. My hair won't fall out. Yes. Well, when I went to see the radiologist, in the radiologist's office, they had the results from the biopsy and everything. And they like, well, everything looks fine. Because of your age, we would want to do chemo. We would want you to do chemo before you do radiation, because you may have some minute microscopic cells floating around in your body, and we want to make sure that we get everything. Well, hearing that you have to have chemo, after I was so set, like, yes, I don't have to do chemo. And when he said they wanted me to do chemo, that was worse than actually getting the breast cancer diagnosis for me, because of all the horrific stories that you hear about chemo, how, people be sicker from chemo than they do from the actual breast cancer, and the fact that your hair is going to fall out. So I think I cried longer hearing that I got to have chemo than I cried when I got the breast cancer diagnosis.
Oh, my goodness.
So, okay, if we got to do chemo, we got to do chemo. Okay, just put your big girl panties on and just do what you have to do, because if this is the protocol for your breast cancer, then we're going to do it. So after accepting that this is what we got to do, before my first chemo treatment, I decided that, you know what? I'm going to decide when my hair falls out. So I went to the barbershop and I had them to cut it off. Like, just, if it's going to fall out, it won't be from the stage it is now. It'll fall out from, you only have a little, so it doesn't really matter. So I went to the barbershop and I had them to give me a haircut. And they cut it as low as they could without shaving my head. They cut it low as they could. And after my second, because I initially was told I was going to have 6 rounds of chemo, but I only had to have 4 rounds of chemo, which, okay, we can get through this a little bit faster. So I think after the second round of chemo is when, the hair that was left actually fell out, which was fine. It wasn't like a big shock or, oh my God. It's like, okay, well, I was at that point where I was accepting it anyway. So we went through that. After 4 rounds of chemo, then we started the 30 rounds of radiation. Well, I think I only missed work maybe like a couple of times, but throughout from March, which was my diagnosis, March of 2000, to September of 2000 is when I went through my whole journey of breast cancer. And after September, I was done with my treatments. And then 5 years after, you're going to see your oncologist. Like, first it was every quarter, and then it became twice a year, and then it became once a year. And even so, within that process, I moved from Louisiana to Texas. And once I got to Texas, I got connected because they gave me like some oncologists to keep following up with. So I was following up with the oncologist in Texas. Like I would see her once a year, every year. And we were past 5 years out. Actually, we got to 10 years. And she was like, Lorraine, you don't have to come and see me anymore. And I'm like, just me knowing that, okay, you get your mammograms, you see your oncologist, you do. That was just my routine every year. It wasn't like it was a big deal to not go. It was just something that this is my life. This is what I want to do. And when she said, I don't have to come and see her anymore, I'm like, well, who am I going to see? She's like, no, you're clear. You don't have, you're totally from remission. You don't have breast cancer anymore. You don't have to. And I'm like, okay. But I still faithfully still have my mammograms every year. I try to work out, do everything I can. Like, I'm a big sweet eater, and I'm just never, ever, ever going to give up sweets. So I try to combat that with do exercise. If you want to have your sweets, exercise. And that's kind of like my journey through this breast cancer life.
But we're talking 23 years ago?
So it's been 23 years ago that, and it's kind of one of those things where you know exactly where you were when you got the news.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something that's, like if somebody say, well, what kind of breast cancer you had? Well, I don't actually remember like the medical terms and all of this, but I do remember exactly where I was when I got the diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those days and moments you'll never, ever forget.
No.
I have so many people this day and age say, why are so many young women getting breast cancer? Well, 20 years ago, 23 years ago, young women were getting breast cancer. When we started the Rose, 37 years ago, young women were getting breast cancer. And I get so frustrated because we really haven't changed our recommendations. When I say our, the protocols that, if they're under 40, there's nothing magic that happens at 40. No. And with your history, oh my goodness. But what a responsibility to have two children and going through that time. My goodness. How did you cope with that?
Well, I just, like I said, I just had to just muscle up the strength and fortitude to know that, okay, this is my life and it's not going to end here. And I got to do everything I got to do to make sure that I stay as healthy as I can possibly so that I can raise these two boys. So there was no, you go to a few of woe is me kind of, but I had a good support. I had my church family was a great support. Going through, when I would go for my chemo treatment, one of my friends from church would go with me. And after the chemo treatment, we would go to a buffet because a couple of days in, you can't taste your food anymore. Mm-hmm. And that would last for probably 10 to 12 days because I would have my treatment like every 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so the day of the treatment, you're fine. You go, You go in, you're in for a couple of hours doing the treatment, and then we would leave. We would go eat. We would go to a buffet and just eat everything in sight because I know in a couple of days I'm not going to be able to taste this food, so I want to do it now. And then you go to maybe almost about 10 to 12 days of not really tasting your food, but I would still eat because I need to eat. So it wasn't, I'm not eating because I can't taste it. I'm going to eat because I need to eat. And by the time you can taste your food again, it's time to go back for your next treatment. So that was kind of our routine. Go to the treatment, go eat. We can't taste it for almost 2 weeks. Go to treatment again. And so that was kind of our routine. And that's, one way I would kind of keep my strength up, because I know a lot of people that go through the chemo, they are so sick that they can't eat. They're, throwing up or whatever. I didn't really experience the just not tasting the food and maybe a little nausea or whatever, but never the point where it's so bad that I can't eat.
Right.
So I made sure that I kept up my, whatever I had to eat, you
did it. Yeah. So and that is a really important point. Everybody's cancer is different. Everybody has different reactions. I think it's really brave that you went ahead and made that decision about your hair. Do you know many others that have made that decision, or?
No, none of all the women that I've spoken to throughout my journey. No, nobody has never said, girl, I had to go cut my hair too.
Well, and that was the one thing you could control.
Yes.
I think that is another big message. If you have anything you can control, go
control
do it.
what you can control.
That's it.
Yes.
Now the boys, did the nephew have unusual problems, or has he, he's already lost, like you said, his mother? Was he more aware, more frightened?
No, actually, because he was so young, with the losing of his mom, he was really young then. And then with me, I don't think he really understood what, like as they got older and I explained to them what was going on or what I went through or whatever, or what his mom went through, then, they understand it. But as far as when we were actually in it, they were too young to really understand what was going on.
And they didn't show any responses then. And I think that's important for young mothers to realize that some children are real sensitive, some are not. Some, it's just as long as mommy's coming home and they see mommy, then
they're fine.
They're fine.
They don't know that, okay, she went and had a treatment today, or she had surgery, or they were too young to understand any of that.
And you were working.
Oh, I
did you ever not work?
No.
I'm always amazed at how, cancer does impact the whole family, and especially with what you were going through with your sister. I mean, you had barely grieved her.
Exactly. Well, my sister passed in 1997. So so I actually had my nephew, because my sister passed in January of 97. Actually on my birthday. So that's another date that you don't forget.
Oh.
And so I got my nephew, and then my son was born in December of 97. So I started 97 with no kids, and I ended 97 with 2 kids.
2 kids. So you have how many altogether?
Just those 2.
Just those two.
Mm-hmm.
So as you were getting further and further away from your cancer, you've always been involved in telling women about it. You never had any qualms with not talking about it?
No.
Yeah.
Because the way I look at it, cancer is not a secret. Mm-hmm. And I think the more you educate yourself and the more you try to educate others, the better off we will be. But yeah, cancer is not a secret. And I try to also tell women to make sure that you advocate for yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, because we're being diagnosed so young, and the protocol have not changed. It's 40, you get your first baseline mammogram. Well, my sister was 28. And as far as we know, there was no family history. Now, I mean, I don't know if, grandma or great-grandma or whatever, what they pass of. You just think they pass of natural causes or old age or anything. But because she, as far as our family goes, she was the first one. And to be diagnosed at 28, and the protocol to get your first mammogram at 40 is like, okay,
I know.
wait,
We could
up.
talk for hours on that one. Yeah. So much wrong with that.
So she was diagnosed at 28, and then I'm diagnosed at 33. So we haven't gotten to 40 yet in my family.
No.
Now I did have a third sister that was diagnosed in her like early 50s, like right at 50. So my mom had 4 daughters, and 3 of us had breast cancer.
Goodness.
And 2 succumbed to breast cancer.
Oh,
So
Lorraine.
it's definitely in the family,
Oh, yeah.
but we didn't know it was in the family. So it's kind of like, and I think now they're saying if you're diagnosed before 40, then your daughter should have a mammogram like 10 years.
10 years earlier.
10
Yeah.
years earlier. Yeah. So like say if I was diagnosed at 33. If I had a daughter, she would need to get her mammogram at what, like
23.
23,
Yeah.
which is crazy. Like what 23-year-old is thinking about a mammogram?
No, but you know,
But-
our youngest was 19 that we diagnosed. So I just think it's so important that women continue to hear you found it, you took action, you know, you insisted that this is not right, even when you were hearing, oh, this. Nobody wants to hear this could be something more.
Right.
But something in your psyche was telling you, now you're going to have to follow this through. I love the story about how you celebrate yourself and you make the men go away. So where did you ever get that idea?
Well, I think once I got to Houston, and like I said, I had been 10 years out, and I didn't have to see the oncologist anymore. And I was actually part of a breast cancer group from church in Houston, and we used to just kind of get together every once in a while, and it was everybody in the breast cancer group, and there was a few people who spouses was part of the group, and there was a few people who were like caregivers. And we would just get together and, you know, just have different events and stuff. And I decided that I wanted to celebrate breast cancer survivors. And so the 4th Saturday of October, I started doing a pink party. And the first year, it was just us girls. And, you know, we would just kind of have wine and different snacks and just toast and celebrate life. The second year, one of the ladies, because I would, you know, tell my husband and boys to find something to do or whatever. The very second year, I'm looking out the window as we're getting ready and starting the party, and I saw one of the ladies and a man walking up with her, and I'm like, okay, I guess I didn't really say on the invitation, women only. From the second year forward, it's been, okay, I guess. So I had to call my husband to tell him to come back to the house because we have a man in the house and, you know, we need somebody to entertain him. And from the second year on, it's been kind of open to everybody. And the funny thing is some of the guys are there that don't have no connection to breast cancer. They just want to be a part of what we were doing. And even now, some of the guys that's been coming for the last 5-6 years, when is the pink party?
Oh, my goodness.
When is the pink party? And they don't mind. I say, okay, if you want to come, gotta wear a pink shirt. And they do. They do not mind. They want to celebrate. Like some now have maybe mothers that have been in breast cancer fights. Some have like sisters or aunts or somebody's, you know, like when you start to kind of search your memory bank or search your family, it's like, oh, you know what? I had an aunt that went through breast cancer a couple years ago, and, you know, can I come? And it's like, yeah, you know, if you want to come, you can come and bring your aunt and make sure you wear your pink shirt. And so it's just been a wonderful just way to just celebrate life and just kind of, I think it's just kind of became like a thing, and everybody now is kind of looking forward to the pink party. So when COVID hit and 2020 and we wasn't able to do it, I decided my initial core group, I still want to do something. So what we did in 2020 and in 2021 is we had a tea party for initially in 2020, it was 6 of us. And we did the whole, okay, we're going to take your temperature before you come in.
Oh, my goodness.
Get your pink mask to go with your pink hat. And we're going to do a tea party. And so we did that in 2020. And then in 2021, we added 2 more. So we did the tea party for 8. And then 2022, we were able to open back up and have the initial pink party.
Oh, I mean, your party is like legendary, Oh, goodness. So tell us how you found out about the rose.
Well, years before I started the Foxhole Family Foundation, I was in a dragon boating team, and this was for breast cancer survivors. And the reason for dragon boating is a lot of women with the breast cancer treatment and stuff and losing lymph nodes, they get lymphedema, which I didn't experience lymphedema. And I heard about lymphedema just through the dragon boating. And so what we used to do was we used to have our meetings, I think it was like once a month on Tuesdays. We would have meetings at the Rose. And some of the ladies who were breast cancer survivors who were on the dragon boating team, I think one of the doctors, I can't remember his name, but I think he kind of introduced them to the Rose.
Dr. Yang.
Yes. Yeah. And so he wasn't my doctor, but he was some of the doctors that patients were on the dragon boating team. And so we would come here and we would have our meetings. And then on Saturdays, I think it was twice a month, we would go out to do the practice dragon boating in Clear Lake. And just hearing about the Rose through that dragon boating team, I knew that this was a facility that, had did breast cancer diagnosis and treatments and stuff for women who were underinsured or who didn't have any insurance. So when we started our foundation, I was like, I need to find organizations in the Houston area that I can partner with who could help women bridge that gap between breast cancer treatment and just their funding for them doing their regular lives. And so I came and I met with you and one of my other members on my board, Brenda Lozano, she's also a breast cancer survivor. So her and I set up an appointment and came and met with you and kind of talked through the Rose and find out all exactly what you guys do. And it was just a good fit for what we were trying to do and what you guys were already doing. And it was just a perfect fit for us to partner with the Rose to make sure that, because I do remember when my sister was going through her treatment, there was a lapse in her insurance coverage. Something happened where she wasn't able to just continue getting her treatment. And I didn't want to see anybody have to choose between getting their treatment and actually paying their mortgage or paying their rent or whatever bills that you still have to pay. And when we partner with the Rose, that was my foundation stepping in the gap to kind of help those who could not afford to have their treatment and to pay for their just regular living. And it worked out really well. And we've been partnering with the Rose since I think we got all of our paperwork done toward the end of 2017. And we've been partnering with the Rose since 2018 until this present time.
Boy, it just seems, I remember that day. It seems so long ago.
I know.
So much has happened. My goodness. So let's talk about your foundation just a minute.
I started my foundation in 2017.
Right.
So it was after...
you were setting it up then.
I was setting it up in 2017 after my son was drafted into the NBA and with the Sacramento Kings. So once he was drafted and I knew that, okay, I'm going to retire from this rat race of day to day, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, going to work, working 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, 13 hours a day because there were 3 different shifts, and it was just depends on what shift you was on, basically how many hours a day you was going to be working. And so after he got drafted in June of 2017, he retired me. And then I knew I wanted to do something in the breast cancer realm. And the thing is, like on draft night, he had his jacket because you can, like, a lot of guys would put something special in the lining of their jacket because they get it custom made or whatever. And they asked him what he wanted to put in his jacket. And he had the breast cancer symbols in his jacket. So on draft night, when they called his name and he went up, on stage to shake the commissioner's hand, he opened up his jacket and it had the breast cancer symbols in it. And he said that was in honor of his mom, who was a breast cancer survivor. So that's how we kind of started the whole foundation.
Well, now, he's a whole nother subject because he's become very famous. And but how did you decide on that name?
The Foxhole Family Foundation? Well, I wanted it to, like, our last name is Fox, and then I wanted to include the whole family. So that's how we did whole, like WHOLE, as opposed to HOLD. Mm-hmm. And so that's how we kind of came up with the name.
Oh, and I remember, and I haven't got to go to a lot of them, but the time I did go, and I mean, it was like family and family and family. Everybody knew everybody, and everybody was there for the same reason, just to help and just to raise money and like you said, to celebrate life. So now with your son, tell us his name.
His name is De'Aaron Fox, and he plays for the Sacramento Kings.
And so this has really become a big part of your life.
Exactly.
Or you're not like his agent.
No, I'm not.
But you follow him around, or you do a lot of work with him.
The beginning, when he first got drafted, I guess the first couple of years, we would do events in Sacramento for the foundation. And then when COVID hit, it kind of shut down a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. So we haven't been able to do a lot of events in Sacramento, but we still try to do stuff in Houston.
Right.
So like we've had October of last year, we did an event at Top Golf. And then this year we did a bowling event at Times Square in Katy, where we raise money for the foundation so that we can continue our efforts in support of those affected by breast cancer.
The way that you built this foundation has to do with really those very definite needs that a woman has.
Yes.
And how much you want to be sure that women can have everything. People don't realize how very expensive cancer is. Even if you have insurance, even if you can afford the things, there's so many other needs and necessities that come up that really, really can drain a budget. And, it continues to be one of the big reasons that people have bankruptcies. That's what's so sad. I mean, it's bad enough you have to go through all the treatment and, you're trying to focus on your recovery. But when you also have to focus on all the financial issues, it can be too much. It's another stress that you don't need during that time. And the Fox Whole Family Foundation really addresses that need.
Yes, we do. And like I said, my main reason for doing that side of it is because I saw my sister go through the lapse in her insurance. My insurance that I had when I was going through treatment, like I hands down, like they were wonderful because I don't even think I really paid a deductible. Everything was covered, everything. And to see someone have to make a choice between your treatment and paying your mortgage, it's heart-wrenching. And whatever the Foxhole Family Foundation were able to do to kind of bridge that gap, we were ready to do it.
So how, you were quite an athlete yourself. I mean, when you were talking about the dragon boat, which is rowing,
Right.
which is a competitive event that breast cancer survivors are lined up in a dragon boat and they're competing against other boats that are breast cancer survivors or other kinds of cancers. But so being active, and you talk about an hour's worth of walking.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I was getting tired just listening to that part. But how would Darren describe you? Would he describe you as an athlete? Would he describe as?
He would probably describe me as a go-getter, competitive. Like, I know Mom is not just going to sit around the house and do nothing. So active, always been active. Yes. Always, want to be out about doing something. So athletic, yes. So yeah, he would probably describe her as a go-getter.
And he also extended the foundation into helping children. Am I?
Yeah.
Yes.
So in addition to breast cancer support, we also do underprivileged youth. So he does a lot of work with his high school that he graduated from here in the Cypress Lakes High School in Katy. He donates to them every year so that they can fund not only their athletic department but scholarships too. So they'll usually break out scholarships so that underprivileged youth can, have money to go to college. So he do provide scholarships for that.
And he's such a great role model.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't just give money. He gives his time and encouragement. And I think that's a credit to you and his dad, but a real credit to you saying you got to do more than just take care of yourself. You've got to go out and help your community.
Right.
If you had and I'm thinking about, you've been on national TV and all of these things, a lot with him, but also a lot with promoting your foundation and making sure people hear what they need to hear. But if you could have a billboard just for you, for your message to women or to families, what would it be?
I think my main message would be advocate for yourself. Like, don't take whatever the first doctor say as gospel. Like, make sure that you should know more about your body than anybody else in the world. You should know.
Wow.
And that would be
so
my message.
True. Yes. You should know more about your body. But Lorraine, you knew this 24 years ago. You knew this already. And that's something that we continue to really try and encourage women. You don't have to do what the doctor says. You do need to feel comfortable with whomever you're with, and you've got to feel comfortable with your recovery and your treatment, and knowing that whoever you're going to knows what they're doing. That makes such a difference. It really does. Oh my gosh, I could think of 10 other questions I'd like to talk with you, but we're going to have to close this up. And thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for all the gifts you have given the Rose. The Fox Whole Family Foundation also provides meals at Thanksgiving, and you shower our survivors and their children with gifts at Christmas. And you also remember the women at Christmas. So many times the mothers get left out, and, but y'all remember that. So I just think it's such a wonderful service, besides being gifts to the community, and certainly the Rose is very grateful to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for partnering with the Fox Whole Family Foundation.
Absolutely. Great partnership.
Thank you for joining us today on Let's Talk About Your Breasts. This podcast is produced by Speak Podcasting and brought to you by The Rose. Visit therose.org to learn more about our organization. Subscribe to our podcast, share episodes with friends, and join the conversation on social media using hashtag Let's Talk About Your Breasts. We welcome your feedback and suggestions. Consider supporting The Rose. Your gift can make the difference to a person in need. And remember, self-care is not selfish. It's essential.